in general, it's kind of frowned upon because it can be misused. One of the things that I did some research, and some of the material on gerrymandering in my book is actually quotes from real publications. And one of them described gerrymandering as Putin-style democracy.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. It's the author podcast. We get to talk to amazing authors from around the world. This author is kind of like from where I'm from, which makes me so happy. And I'm really excited to have Shelley on the show today. We're going to be talking about her book. It's a Devious Web that we're going to spin together here in our conversation. And I'm excited to have her on the podcast. She's being a part of a big event here in Ontario this weekend as well, at the time of recording. If you missed it, you missed a great talk. But if you're going to be there, make sure you say hi to Shelley as well. Shelley, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here today. And it's also great to meet another Canadian who's doing such great work.
Well, thank you. Now that makes me feel happy, warm and fuzzy inside. I appreciate that. Where are you originally from here in Canada?
I was born in Timmins, Ontario, home of Shania Twain.
Hello.
I unfortunately can't sing like Shania, and it's very cold up there. I only lived there for 2.5 years, but when I was born, but that's where I started out and lived in Elliott Lake, and then grew up mostly in Kingston, Ontario, which is much farther south.
Great. Excellent. That's amazing. Where do you live now?
I'm in Trenton, Ontario. Okay. So about 2 hours east of Toronto, I guess, by driving.
Excellent. Great. So this is amazing. We like to kind of talk to the authors at the beginning of the podcast. Shelley, we have people here who are dreaming of the day when they will grace the stage and speak or have a booth and their book's there to sell and meet people. And they're just starting. Like they're at the very beginning. What would have been helpful for you to hear in a conversation on a podcast or wherever, and you heard an author talking about their journey? What would have been helpful to hear from them when you first started your journey as a writer?
I think knowing that writing the book is just the first stage and not the end stage would be helpful. Because a lot of people think, oh, great, I've done the book. I feel so good about accomplishing it, or that's the beginning point. But there's a lot that happens afterwards, having to market it, getting used to getting out there and putting yourself in front of people. A lot of authors suffer from imposter syndrome, where they get to that end point and can't quite believe it and don't feel confident putting the name author beside their name. So there's a lot of adjustment that comes along. And I think it would have been really helpful to know that the process is just starting when you finish your book. Not to discourage a listener who might be a new author and is keen, because it's really important to be passionate, but just to realize it is a process, it's a journey. And that's what I call the blog on my website, shelleygrandy.com. I named it The Journey because it's a heck of a journey, Dave.
Yeah, it's a long journey, right? That's the other thing too, I think, for authors. There's these ways that people are going to reach out to you and offer you to be famous and, 5 easy payments. But an author journey takes a long time. You really need to invest and build a community. And I always encourage people creating any type of content, Shelley, to build in public. Like, let people see your journey, not just the finished work. Because when they follow along and see you build and write your book or start a podcast or whatever you're going to do, when they see you kind of work through and wrestle through all the challenges to get to your finish line, you've already got a built-in audience ready to support you and celebrate with you. Whether, again, like you're going to be on stage this weekend at the time of recording, talking and presenting, like your audience is there going, go, Shelley, go. Like, it's so great. So yeah, build in public. I think that'd be one other suggestion for authors as well.
I think that's a great point. And it's not easy for people that aren't conversant in social media normally. You might have your Facebook followers and they're very dedicated friends, family, and so forth. But to build, you have to build out from that and get used to other platforms. If you're not on Instagram, for example, I'm still a neophyte on Instagram. I do my best, but I'm sure I've put some pictures up upside down or, inside out. So I think, it takes a while to get comfortable with social media if it's not your forte. But you're absolutely right. Building a community. I created a newsletter so that as people buy books and so forth, I can get their email address if they're willing, and they follow along the journey that way. I have the website. I think it's important for people to have that platform, as
Right.
you say, to launch themselves from.
Yeah.
And just for listeners that might be interested, the event that you've alluded to is the National Women's Show in Toronto. And I'm on stage at 12:45 on Friday, and it's at the Metro Convention Center in Toronto, right downtown. So it's going to be really fun. I think there's something like 500 vendors of all kinds. So it's a really big event and it's targeted towards a girls' day out. So I think a lot of women are going to be flocking to Toronto for this.
There you go. And flocking to Toronto to come and see you and spend some time with you too, Shelley. That's another good bonus as well.
I appreciate that.
I like it. Okay, so you're an author. Congratulations. You have your book.
Thank you.
Have you written anything else previous to this, or is this your first time out as an author?
Well, my career centers on writing. So I've always, it's part of my DNA being a writer. I started off as a journalist for 4 years, and then I went into corporate communications. And so I've been writing for clients for a long time. My primary subject was fiber optics, because for 25 years I worked for Nortel. Then I set up my own PR business, serving high-tech clients in telecom, IT, and so forth. So I've done that for 17 years, and I still have a client out of Quebec City. They're a great company called Expo, and they're a test and measurement company for fiber optic solutions. So it's kind of interesting. I write about satellite communications and undersea communications. It's completely different from my creative writing.
Wow.
I have done creative writing along the way, but kind of around the edges. Wrote some poetry, wrote things that were short to write as I was sitting in airports, but this is my first novel.
Is there anything that you can carry over from your career, as in the writing you do in your career, to writing for yourself now as an author?
Yes, actually, because my book centers on the CEO of a tech company in Toronto, and tongue-tied, a
Yeah.
data analytics company. And he's just about to sell his company to a Silicon Valley acquirer when he comes under attack. And that's the premise of the novel. The Devious Web part comes in, where a homicide detective who's a friend of his is trying to figure out who's coming after Tom and why. So he's looking at Tom's inner circle of friends, family, and colleagues to see what's up. And and I have ported some technology into the book, and I've explained it kind of as we go along. So in some sections, Tom's doing a media interview where he's talking about his business. That gives me the opportunity to explain the technology to people that might not be familiar. And some things in the politics line. I follow politics as well. And I've tried to do some sort of things that are explainers in the book without putting everyone to sleep. So there is a carryover from my career and my interest in politics.
Are you looking at politics through a Canadian lens or an American lens?
Well, I am a Canadian, but it's focused on the US because I find especially the Trump eras, have been very interesting. And so I followed along. And of course, I think the insurrection really got everyone's attention. Yeah. And following his second term has been even more absurd in some ways and surprising. And so I think as Canadians, we follow that because we are their next door neighbor and affected by their policies.
Okay. Talk a little bit about your journalism background too then, because that kind of lends into our conversation. What kind of training do you get in your early days of journalism about how to approach a story, how to craft a story? Because you have a limited amount of time, a limited amount of words to get across your message. How does that kind of work? What kind of training do you get early days as a journalist?
So I took journalism at university, at Carleton, which gave me a lot of background in terms of training on writing. I still remember one exercise we did at university. One of our first stories was to pretend that we had covered a fire, and they gave us all the facts about this fire. We had to put it in the right order and make sure that we had the news story at the beginning. And you learned how to create leads, which is the first paragraph that has to have all the salient facts in. And I did find that when I had my first job as a junior reporter at the Whig Standard in Kingston, I was a summer student. Was complaining to some of the other journalists. The editor keeps changing my lead. I don't understand. And they said, well, you're not getting to the heart of the story. So I had coaching from some of the senior reporters at the newspaper who took time to help me through that. So you learn both through the training that you've had and through experience to kind of get to the point pretty quickly. And in journalism, your articles are cut from the bottom up. So when an editor looks at your story, if they need to shorten it, they cut from the bottom. So
Oh,
you might say, okay, I better get the really good stuff at the front of this because an editor could just chop it in half or cut off the end paragraphs. So we call it an inverted pyramid
okay.
because all of us in university or in high school or whatever, we learned to write essays that you built up to the end. And the end was really
Yeah,
important because
right.
that was your conclusion. And they call it an inverted pyramid because you're flipping that and you're writing about the most important stuff at the beginning. So yeah. So I mean, that makes me impatient with my husband. It's like very often he hears, so what's the bottom line, Just tell me. I
Yeah.
don't care what happened to the car. Tell me, is it still running? Okay, that's what I needed to know.
So do you have to change gears then from that teaching and that mentality and approach to writing your novel? Like, because that seems to be at odds with each other.
Oh, that's an interesting point. I found that I wrote in more succinct chapters than some authors. I think in terms of like I would love to see this book made into a movie. So my chapters are kind of like scenes, and each one is set in a particular setting with particular characters. You'll see at the top of my chapters, I identify who the people are that are in each chapter. So I think my writing from that point of view is kind of succinct because of being a journalist. And I had to actually work a little bit to elaborate on certain scenes, like describing scenery or describing context in an office or something, because I was like getting to the point, but I wasn't making it colorful. So I had to make sure that I added color to my writing.
That's interesting. Right. Yeah, yeah, because you have like the structure, but now you have to add context and story and situation and everything has to be added to that to
Right.
kind of fill it out for the reader because they don't know what's coming. You know, as a writer, but as an author, but the audience doesn't know. So you got to give them enough to kind of carry them through. Why Devious Web? Why that title for the book?
Well, that's another thing for if there's any new writer listening at the moment. Picking a title for a book is a challenge in itself because there's so many books out there. And so you end up Googling to see, did anybody take this name yet? And I would like struggled to find a name that represented what I wanted it to, but was still unique. No one else had taken this. And so I did, a lot of research and worked with my publisher to kind of look at lists of names. It's almost like choosing a baby name, you're like, oh no, we can't pick that name because, our neighbor picked that name. They can't have the same name.
No,
And so I finally landed on Devious Web, but then I couldn't remember the name of my own book because there'd been so many titles, and I had to put it on my wall to say, Shelley, your book is called Devious Web, and get over the other ones that you were looking at. And and now I actually really like the name, and I think it suits the book. So it was a happy outcome.
nice. Yeah, it's very intriguing. It makes you kind of go, oh, what's this about? That's a good thing. You want people to go, hey. So I like that.
Well, that
Yeah, okay, no, this is set on U.S. politics. How much have you been following U.S. politics over your career? Is this something that's always been top of mind for you or more recent?
I would say probably peripheral during time that I was at Nortel.
Okay.
More recently, more focused on it. My daughter teases me that I watch way too much CNN, which is probably true.
Yeah.
But when I was working at Nortel, I traveled all over the U.S. So I was I was in Atlanta, Dallas, New Orleans, San Francisco, you name it. San Diego. I was all over the place. So I got a good feel for the business environment in the US over time. And it does tweak your interest in their culture and their politics compared to ours kind of thing.
For the readers, can you kind of give us kind of an overview of what the story is going to be about for us as readers so that we can kind of connect with not only this is going to be a great book for me as a listener, but also I know someone else is going to love your book as well. Just kind of give us the high level. What's the book about?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So my book, Devious Web, is spans kind of Gone Girl twists, the social network business scheming, and a little Agatha Christie thrown in for good measure because of the detective sleuth thing. So it's kind of a combination of those things. And I would say if anybody, like I'm a Netflix fanatic, and if anybody liked the series Suits or Succession, they're probably going to really love Devious Web.
Nice.
Same kind of intrigue. And I think the other interesting thing is there is a little romance thrown in, that's kind of a subplot. There are horses in the book because I'm an equestrian, and of course my hero had to be a rider.
Yes.
There's a little bit of everything that people would find that they could relate to, I think. But for those that find business, politics, interpersonal relationships between family members and family dynamics, all of that is in the book.
Wow. Okay. So that's an interesting collection. Having the horses in there, my wife will be thrilled because she grew up with horses. She had her own horse when she was a younger person, and that was her favorite thing. So I'm sure that's an interesting dynamic to add to the mix. I like that you have that in there.
Initially, when I first started thinking about a topic for the book, I was thinking about focusing on horses and having the horse play a really central role. But then I realized, no, that I wanted to broaden it more to the person that owns the horse and that he's a business person, and it makes it a bigger, scopier story.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just a different dynamic to add to there. And I like that. It's kind of a little bit of a diversion, but it actually feeds the story as well. That's really interesting. And it brings in your own personal love for horses as well. So, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
it was fun. And actually some of the places, all the places in the book that I reference, like there's a stable in Caledon that I reference and near Orangeville. Of course, I used to have my horses there. And so I'm very familiar with that territory. Some of the book unfolds in Honey Harbor, Ontario, and we used to have a boat up there. Toronto, of course, I know well. I used to commute into Toronto to work at a company there for a little bit. I've been to the locations in North Carolina that I write about. So it's really fun because pretty much every location that I write about, I'm familiar with. And so I'm writing from something that I've known.
Now, in your book, the one thing that you talk about is a term that I am slightly familiar with, but I need some education on because I'm not really sure what this really means. Gerrymandering, it's like a great word. I'm like, I like how it's all put together, but can you explain and unpack, because this is part of your book, what is gerrymandering? Is it Canadian? Is it U.S. only? Can you kind of unpack this for me? I really need to know more.
Sure, of course. It's a term that wasn't very known at all when I was writing about the book, or when I was writing the book. But now it's really come to the forefront, and it's a U.S. only term. We don't suffer from that here, but every 10 years, the U.S. does a new census, and every 10 years, the politicians in whatever district have the right to redo their voting districts. So it's the redistricting is a legal practice that happens in concert with the census. Gerrymandering takes it one step farther. It can be misused by a party to rejig some of the voting lines to favor their party. So, let's say, there's a neighborhood in North Carolina where there's people that are dedicated Democrats in a sea of Republicans. You can if you can tailor the voting lines around that neighborhood and pack all of the Democrats into one voting district, then they only get one vote for all those people. Whereas if they're spread out into different pockets, they might have more power. Unfortunately, gerrymandering often harms people who are less advantaged financially or who might be from a different or from a certain ethnic group. It's kind of targeting the wrong, like some of the disadvantaged people that don't have power to speak up and say this isn't appropriate. And we're seeing a lot of the states right now. Texas, I think, led the way with wanting to do gerrymandering, and it's been in front of the courts whether they're going to allow it or not. I think they just turned it down, but I'm not entirely sure of the latest. But in general, it's kind of frowned upon because it can be misused. One of the things that I did some research, and some of the material on gerrymandering in my book is actually quotes from real publications. And one of them described gerrymandering as Putin-style democracy.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty powerful stuff. So, yeah.
Didn't we here in Canada have something where I think it was in either Quebec or Alberta where they were changing kind of the area of a voting area? Like there was some impact for Pierre Poilievre here in Canada where his area changed for his
his riding?
Yeah, his riding changes. Is that similar as far as changing the map? Is that kind of like that or not at all?
I don't think so. Okay. I think what happened with him was he transplanted himself to a different riding so that he could fare better than he did in his original riding, is my understanding. But I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
But no, I think the ridings are defined by the government. I'm not sure if how we revisit them in Canada. I'm not sure if it's associated with our census.
Okay.
But I think it's a more disciplined process here, and the ridings are very structured. In the U.S., if you look at some of their voting districts, they've got zigs and zags around neighborhoods, and you can tell what's been gerrymandered. And it's not something new. They've done this for a long time. It used to be based on kind of experiential stuff before the internet, but now they can pull together all kinds of data from, let's say, gun registries or drivers' offices or licensing bureaus and so forth, and collect, or even people's, like, our data that we share regularly over the internet without even thinking about it, about our personal identity. All of those things can be amalgamated so they can identify voters.
Okay.
And by group, yeah.
Yeah. I think, wasn't it in the news like not too long ago that California did some changes to their voting maps as well? Was that part of it? Is this correct?
They're talking about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Governor Newsom is trying to fight fire with fire because his attitude is Democrats have been too complacent not to fight back. And he saw all of these Republican states that are thinking about gerrymandering or actually actively trying to implement it. And so he said, well, California is going to do the same then. And he's looking to do redistricting, gerrymandering in California.
Interesting. So this is going to become more and more common in the
I think it's going to become a more and more common issue because the courts are weighing in on whether it's going to be allowed. And I think we'll hear more about it as the courts start to weigh in on whether or not this will be allowed in different states. But it's just going to be like escalating because if the Republicans do it, Democrats are going to feel they have no choice. I think it's going to be really a bit of a mess for them to have to deal with in the states.
Do you think other countries are watching this unfold and making decisions on whether they want to adopt a similar approach to how they do their elections?
I think that all sorts of countries are watching the U.S. very carefully for a whole bunch of reasons right now, between tariffs, and I think gerrymandering would be the lower part of their list in terms of what they're watching. But I think overall, I think that the thing the U.S. has to bear in mind is that they've been a beacon of democracy in the world, and people are watching to see if that continues.
So how does Devious Web then bring in the gerrymandering aspects of what we're talking about? How does that kind of fit into the story for us as readers?
So I don't want to give away too much of the plot.
Yes.
But we have to, it's kind of like, okay, our CEO has a data analytics company, and what that means is that his software is capable of looking at large chunks of data and finding specific information out of that data and extracting it so that people can make better decisions. And when you think about gerrymandering, it relies on software that seeks out information about people.
Mm.
So at some point, it wouldn't be difficult to see that a bad actor of some kind could try to get their hands on software that is going to help them with their exercise. So that I think probably that's enough to say about
Okay.
the connection, because I don't want to spoil
No.
it for readers. And that's again kind of it's not the central plot, but it's certainly important to the storyline.
Our world is impacted right now by artificial intelligence, AI this, AI that. Everything is now this and AI. Is there an AI element to your story as well?
Um, to some extent, because data analytics and data mining
Yeah.
contribute to AI.
Right.
So I think you could say that yes, although and in fact the company in California that's trying to acquire my hero's company is actually more into the AI side of things.
Mm.
That's why they want to acquire his company.
So there's a lot of different entry points for readers to come into this story from a tech status, kind of that kind of background. If you're interested in tech, you'd be interested in this. Government and politics and political procedures, you'd be interested in this. Just a great story and kind of the detective side of all the things that are happening within the story. There's a lot of different entry points for readers. So you have a pretty vast audience. Who do you think is your ideal reader then?
I think my ideal reader is probably listening right now,
Yeah.
because they're probably a savvy person who likes to read about current events. But this is basically a whodunit.
Mm-hmm.
So if you just love mysteries
Yeah.
and you just want to read it for the purely mystery side of it, then I think you would enjoy it. I think people that are interested in media, there's some media interviews in this press, like fake, fake media, fictional media interviews. I think if you want to know how the inner workings of something like a company dealing with media issues, that's another aspect of it. So yeah, I think, but it's basically a whodunit,
Yeah.
and it goes through a process throughout the book. Also, the characters, I really like my characters. I think I could go have a coffee or a beer with them. As any author could tell you, you do get to very feel like your characters very well. Obviously, you invented them, but they become larger than life. And I think readers find the characters intriguing as well.
What was fun for you as the author to write Devious Web? What part was like, oh, I just love this part?
um, Gosh, I think I have a bad boy character, Patrick. He's an Irishman. I had a lot of fun writing the chapter in Las Vegas where he goes to Las Vegas and has a great time.
Mm.
And he ends up getting in trouble with his boss because of the trip. And that was a lot of fun to write. I think I enjoyed that chapter a lot. And that's towards the front of the book, so I don't feel
There you
like I'm spoiling anything.
go. For readers, the one thing I like to always kind of press my guests for is my audience always curious if the authors coming on the show are working on new projects as well. We obviously want to celebrate Devious Web and promote that and get many people as possible coming in your way. But we always want to also know if our authors are continuing to write into the future. So what are your plans kind of long term as an author? Are you going to keep writing? Are there more versions in a series for Devious Web? What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. I just did the audiobook version actually, so that was the latest thing.
Nice.
I published Devious Web with Spark Press in October of last year, so 2024.
Yep.
The audiobook was completed in August of this year, and I worked with a narrator out of Vancouver, BC, Justin Smallbridge. He did a great job. So I've been focused on that, and I've been focused on the marketing. I do have an idea for a second book, and I think that may happen at some point. We'll see, but it's kind of percolating in the back of my mind. So,
Good.
time will tell. I am an older author, so, I won't be writing like 40 books, but I may have another one in there somewhere.
That's good. Yeah, because once the audience finds you and they're like, oh my gosh, I love Shelley's books and I love what she does. I just hope there's more, right? They're just kind of longing for more from their favorite author.
That's very
right?
nice. Yeah, I've had people say to me, the other thing is that ultimately I'd love to see it, as I mentioned, made into a movie.
Yeah.
So that would be so fun because I structured the book as kind of scenario based, it'd be really easy to transpose to a screenplay.
Yeah.
And I already know that I would love to have Justin Hartley be the lead actor.
Justin,
So
are
if
you listening,
anybody,
Justin? Yeah.
yeah, Justin, please. He was in This Is Us, and
Yeah.
he's the central character in Tracker. If anyone watches that show on Canadian TV, so yeah, he's a good actor. So I think he'd be great.
Okay, so if anybody here listening knows Justin or has a contact to Justin, send him a copy of this podcast so that he can hear Shelley's wish, and maybe we can make something happen. I don't know, Shelley, right?
That would be awesome.
That's good. I like that you write from a visual perspective as well. I think that's interesting as a reader when that's your intent as you approach writing the book, because then we benefit as a reader from that kind of approach. Was that your intent right from the beginning, that you really wanted this to possibly end up on screen potentially in the future?
I think it's just the way I think,
Yeah.
that's kind of how it came about. But I also have a friend who's very creative, and she thinks even more in movie scene type things. She visualizes the characters and so on. And she said to me right from the get-go, this needs to be a movie. So it was encouraging. But the funny part is, I have been to all the places that I mentioned, but I wrote the book during the pandemic.
Okay.
That's kind of how I ended up with the time on my hands that I could actually sit down and write something creative aside from just working. And all of the scenes that I wrote in Toronto, I had to do by memory because I couldn't go to Toronto to check everything out. So my friend Stephanie and I went on a fact-finding mission to Toronto to make sure I had everything straight. And it was so much fun. I wrote about, in the first chapter, I have one restaurant, which is in Yorkville. And I'd never actually been to that particular restaurant. But I had looked at their menu online and I thought, oh, I think their signature dish must be their lobster spoons, which I'd never heard of. So sure enough, I met with the manager and the chef, and they said, yeah, that's our signature dish, all right. Well, sadly, I'm allergic to shellfish, so I couldn't try it. But Stephanie sacrificed herself and tried the lobster spoons, and she looked like she was going to pass out. It was so good. So we had a lot of fun checking that venue out. I also write about a bank in downtown Toronto where my character goes to the safety deposit box area. So we walked into the bank, said, could we see your safety deposit box area because it's in my book?
Security. Yeah, right.
Yeah, I thought that's when the police might come. And meanwhile, they went and got the manager, and he spent an hour with us and toured us through this bank.
Wow.
And took us down to the vault where the safety deposit boxes are, but also showed us all kinds of really cool things that they store in the bank, like paintings. And it was incredible. And he told us the whole history. And yeah, I couldn't believe that he spent a whole hour with us. Where else did we go? We went to the King Edward Hotel. That's where we stayed because that's a scene in the book is set at the King Edward Hotel. I was writing from memory about their ballroom. I wanted to make sure that I remembered it correctly because it was actually in the 80s when I was at a party there that I was remembering back to. And sure enough, it was a good recollection. So that was a lot of fun. And so we did this great tour of, tour gastronomique de Toronto and had a lot of fun fact checking.
Nice. So when you're walking through those buildings on the street in that area, can you visualize your characters walking along with you, or you can kind of see like a TV show or a movie? They're just ahead of you and you can actually see them cross the street or something. You're like, I can picture my characters in this setting.
I feel like I've pictured them with me. Like I picture sitting, I could easily see myself going to a business lunch with my main character and his investor.
Okay.
Or I could see myself, like another place in Toronto that's in the book is Soho House. And my daughter, when she got married, had a day after party at the Soho House. And so I visualized that, and I could see my characters going into an event there. So it's more like I feel like they're accompanying me, not so much watching them, because I feel like maybe that just makes me sound a little like a crazy person. I picture them being with me and interacting with them. Or like going to the bar with one of my characters who loves Baco Noir wine like I do. What a coincidence.
Wow.
So yeah, I think it's more about relating to them on different levels too,
Excellent.
because some of them I would be talking business to if I was with them. Some of them I would just be hanging out and socializing. Some of them, like Patrick, I'd be trying not to go gambling with him. So, because he's a gambler. So, just different things like that I would relate to with them.
Wow. Excellent. I love it, Shelley. Let's send people to your website, Shelley, because you got to get practicing your speech for the weekend. Let's send everybody to your website where they can find out more about Devious Web, and they can connect with you and your story, and also get the audiobook, which I love audiobooks. But yeah, let's talk about your website, Shelley. Where do we want to send the audience?
That's very kind. It's shelleygrandy.com. So just www.shelleygrandy.com. And you'll find links to purchase the book. You'll find a link to my YouTube channel, and also my blog that I mentioned, The Journey, if you want to see the progression. So if there's an author listening that wants to know from the start to the finish what sort of phases I went through, then check out The Journey.
And if you have met Shelley at this event this weekend and now listening to the podcast episode, welcome. Nice to have you here. And please continue to support an amazing author. And make sure you tell somebody not only about the book, but that you saw Shelley in person on stage at the event in Toronto, whatever. But make sure people know about Shelley. This is great. Shelley, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you so much. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It's a wonderful platform that you're providing for authors and readers.
Excellent. Everyone, all information as always in the show notes. Go over there, let Shelley know you heard about her here on the show. You saw her in person at the event. Or you're just following her journey. When you buy Devious Web, please leave a great review. I know that Shelley would love to hear your thoughts, your comments, your encouragement as a reader. Our authors create the books. They write the words. We owe them our words back in return. So please leave a great review. I know Shelley'd love to hear your comments. Again, Shelley, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.